Slavery, like gravity, is based on a defined concept. Whereas gravity is dependent on mass, slavery is dependent on debt, a debt that's recurring and can never be satisfied. Slavery always denies you the ownership of what is yours in such a way as to negate your liberty. Slavery converts something very important to you into your master's investment, who uses the threat of punishment and/or confiscation to make you pay. Slavery is like gravity, and just as gravity brings down the feather and the cannonball, slavery can be comfortable or horrific. Classical slavery, as in the South before the Civil War, was when people were denied ownership of their physical selves and forced to work on a plantation. This kind of slavery also involved imprisonment, as slaves were not allowed to leave the plantation. The vast majority of historical slaves were also prisoners, as their freedom to travel almost always demanded a return to their master. However, being made a slave and a prisoner are actually separate concepts, but there is no reason why you can't be made both. The comfortable slaves of today are closer to medieval serfs than what most people consider to be slaves, because the government is just prohibiting the ownership of their homes. But if you separate slavery from imprisonment and define slavery as an overwhelming force denying the people's ability to become free from debt and acquire actual liberty by the ownership of property, then the difference between slavery and serfdom is just splitting hairs. Modern-day serfs, what the government calls homeowners, could be defined as slaves that are not prisoners, except for the prison of inescapable debt. A never-ending homestead property tax clearly makes the ownership of our homes impossible and actual liberty unachievable. Where is your liberty if you have to pay the government for your existence on the planet? Where is your liberty if you can't own a piece of the earth called home? If God is in your heart and home is where the heart is, then your home is more than your castle. It's a church. When the purpose of a home is liberty, it should never be appraised in monetary terms. After all, you can't put a price on liberty. There is a difference between freedom and liberty, and neither can exist without the other. You get your liberty from what is yours and your freedom from what you can do with it. Liberty is achieved when the only obligation for what you have is to God and nature. Freedom is achieved when the only obligation for what you do is to God and nature. It's what you make with what you've got that counts. Slavery is based on the denial of liberty. You can't be made a slave unless something belongs to you. But if you were not the rightful owner of your physical self, you would not exist. There is no difference in principle from being forced to make cotton under the threat of a beating and being forced to make money under the threat of being made homeless, except we are not prisoners on a plantation. America is the home of the comfortable slaves and the land of the deceived. Until we recognize that ownership and its companion liberty are the consequence of being freed from debt, liberty will always be an illusion. Our government makes it impossible for anyone to acquire their version of liberty unless you worship them with the almighty dollar. Our government uses liberty like the mechanical rabbit placed in front of the greyhound to make him run faster. Just as we all know the greyhound will never catch the rabbit, our government makes sure we can never acquire liberty by making the American dream of home ownership into a lie. Free societies don't exist where governments require people to make money to keep what belongs to them. Here in the USA, we do not live in a free society. The greatest deterrent to your liberty is the misunderstanding of what it is and the ability of government to make you into a comfortable slave. Unfortunately, it seems to be human nature for people to prefer comfortable slavery of the state rather than to have their liberty. To quote Thomas Jefferson, "Nothing is ours which another may deprive us of." These words are worth more than 1,000 pictures.